Hey, true believers. Welcome to Like a House of Fire, an occasional video podcast on CagesideSeats.com. My name is Sean Rueter. You can find me on Twitter at S1Rude. More often, you can find me at Cageside because it's the best damn pro wrestling community on the internet. So that's where I like to hang my hat. And this is episode 8 of this occasional thing that I do here where I spout out my opinions at you for 10 minutes or so. And this is my long-threatened Guardians of the Galaxy related episode. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Good flick. Even if you're not a Marvel nerd, I don't think I am. I'm just a nerd all the way around, I think. But my wife liked it. She's not a comic book person. She'll read them occasionally, but she's definitely not a wrestling person. She kind of hates it. And she was impressed with our man, Big Dave Bautista, who's in it, which is one of the tie-ins to doing a podcast about it on a pro wrestling site. I think he did a fantastic job. I don't know that it's his breakout role to never come back to the WWE. It's kind of, he's great in it, don't get me wrong, but it was very smart that they structured him into a dry, stiff character. He manages to get a lot of warmth and humor out of it, but it doesn't actually, they're not asking him to do Shakespeare, so that's it's a nice introduction to a bigger market for him, and hopefully he does good things with it. But I don't think we need to worry about him turning into The Rock and never coming back. So anyway, so that's good. Like I said, he's really funny. You probably already, if you haven't seen it, you probably even already heard some of the jokes. He's got some really great one-liners, and that's awesome. My main tie-in to the pro wrestling piece, though, is that in the course of a 2-hour movie, and it is, I think it's a little under 2 hours, maybe a little over. It's not a Transformers or Lord of the Rings 3-hour epic. It is, they get in, they introduce you to 5 characters. This is my cat Nessie again, for all the cat aficionados. I think they're getting used to me doing these and not being shy while I'm talking to the computer anymore. Where was I? Oh, yes. In the course of a 2-hour movie, they introduce us to 5 characters that, most of the audience doesn't know before. I've read a few Guardians comics, but I'm certainly not as well versed in them as I would be in, say, the X-Men or Avengers or Batman. And these are slightly different takes on the characters, even from the comics that I've read. So they introduce us to them, they give us reasons to care about them, they show us that they care about each other, and that in turn makes us care about them even more. It adds some stakes to the film, which I don't think this is a spoiler. I know we had one of my oldest, dearest readers and viewers, Manolo, was worried that I was going to spoil this. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that one of my beefs with this movie is that it does what a lot of comic book movies, superhero movies, and especially Marvel movies do, is that the villain's motivation is to get something that will destroy everything. And it's sort of hard to, the stakes on that don't feel very real, obviously. And especially not when they're repeated in a lot of movies over and over. I think both of the Thor movies had the same premise. The Avengers movie basically had the same premise. They're all tied in together, and if they do a comics thing behind the villain's motivation, it can be pretty weird and clever. We'll see what they do. Anyway, this is still trying to make this mostly about pro wrestling and not my other side nerddoms. So, with these characters, that's where we feel the stakes, because we care about these characters and we care about their relationships to one another in the course of 2 hours. So this is making me think a couple things. How in the blue hell can WWE not do this with 6 hours of television every week? There's some characters that they have gotten over. Especially as a babyface. Somebody that we want to root for, that we care about. Daniel Bryan is the obvious example, and that was a large part of that. The connection to him as a babyface character really came through his partnership with Kane, and the anger management skits, and then seeing them begrudgingly stick up for each other. That was where we got behind that. The Rhodes brothers really got over for a short amount of time. They probably still, they're still over, but they would be even more over if there had been some sort of continuation of their feud with the Authority. But it was the two of them sticking up for each other. That was a big part of what connected us to them. And the biggest example of this in the last 6 months or so is the Shield, who, despite only having been babyfaces for a couple of months, were, just freaking beloved by every wrestling fan that I know, and part of that is that they're really talented workers of different different styles. A couple of them have a really deep indie pedigree for the hardcore fans or folks that dig down into that kind of stuff, as I do. But even among more casual fans, newer fans, they were connected to the bond, the brotherhood between those three guys, and that was why Seth Rollins is a hated heel now, because he was the guy that broke that. But like I said, in the core, I mean, these guys were hated for most of their run, for most of their, about 18-month run from Survivor Series 2012 to some pay-per-view after WrestleMania this year. I can't remember the exact show names, but I mean, it was that connection that drove us. And this, the other thing that this got me thinking about is, as we discussed on the Raw podcast last night, which you should check it out. We had a little technical difficulties, but Mad Matt Roth is back, and I think we're getting our groove on, talking about Raw. You should watch it, listen to it. Anyway, plug, $9.99. It doesn't cost $9.99. It's free. You can just listen to it. All you need is an internet connection and watch it. See my face and then the logo of Cage Side Seats a lot, and some of my cats walking around in the background. What the hell am I talking about? I don't know. Oh, I'm old. See, when you're old, you lose your train of thought sometimes. So I got it back now, though. When I was a kid, I grew up on Hulkamania and rock and wrestling. I was a preteen and a young teenager in the mid to late '80s. The other thing, though, is I used to love watching on Saturdays. I would watch the Southern Wrestling, the TBS show, the NWA show, and I would get the Four Horsemen running roughshod over things. But when Arn and Tully and Rick and the boys were beating up Magnum TA or Ricky Garvin or Dusty Rhodes, one of those other guys would run in, and they weren't a stable. They were just good guys, and they didn't want to see anybody, just stomping a mud hole in somebody, and certainly not by their mutual enemy. So WWE did a little bit of this year with the Usos running in to save Cena a lot during his feud with Bray Wyatt, but running in to save Cena is redundant, because anybody who's watched this WWE programming at all knows that Cena doesn't need saving. That's a whole different subject, and if I go too far down that rabbit hole, I never get back to my main point, and we'll be way over 10 minutes. But I mean, that's sort of the structure of what I'm talking about, but it's not the right execution. But I mean, they're really missing the point, and there's been some great fan posts on this subject too. They're missing an opportunity by completely splitting up Reigns and Ambrose for this same kind of, those two guys could get even hotter than they are. Ambrose is doing just fine on his own, but Reigns could use a little push right now, and the two of those guys, even just keeping their alignment in people's memories a little bit more than they're doing right now against the Authority, could really push them to, the way that it helped Daniel Bryan get over with Kane, and the way that the Rhodes brothers got over feuding against the same stable. It's taken on a different form right now, but the Authority's the same, has been a lot of what those guys have feuded against. And it's just little stuff like that. We're not, I don't believe that we're so jaded in the 21st century that we won't root for babyfaces. We just have to be given reasons to care about them, and right now that's something that the WWE especially is dropping the ball on. And the kinds of things that I'm talking about, one thing that they would probably need to do is get away from their reliance on the beatdown segment. They like to do that so that they don't have to give away clean match decisions. But again, that's probably a whole nother rant from me. But if we could just get the occasional, Dolph Ziggler comes out to stick up for Big E Langston. I mean, those guys had a connection. Again, the Ambrose and Reigns is the obvious one. I don't know, just anybody. I mean, like I said, it could be Barry Windham running in to save Magnum TA, and I was, even though I was getting to the point where I knew the Horsemen were kind of cool heels and they were badasses, I would get, that would be the thing that would get me to pump my fist a little bit, was when one of those guys ran in and cleaned house, and then you fade to black, and you just have a little bit more of a connection to those guys because they're sticking up for each other, and that's something that everybody can relate to, even the jaded smarks among us in the internet wrestling community. So I would like to see them try to bring some of that back, and like I said, they've got enough time every week hell, they should be able to do that if they had nothing but the 3-hour Raw. But you also have main event. You also have, I mean, Superstars is a tool that they don't ever use. They could use that. They could, I mean, SmackDown's another one. Then you've got the pay-per-views. You've got all the web stuff. There's plenty of opportunity to create these alignments, and I don't think you have to sacrifice the competition piece at all. When the babyfaces need to go up, you know, need to feud for the same thing, you can book around them running into each other too much, and you can have them, you know, manly handshake or womanly handshake, and, you know, once we build up Diva's stories to the same level, hopefully, you know, they can agree that they're going to respectfully go after the same prize, kind of a thing. I don't think there's any problem with that. And I'm not talking about a bunch of stables, although you could have a few. That would be, I mean, I think they could have more than they have right now, but, which I guess is just one. I mean, it's really just the Authority and then some tag teams, right, since the new nation's not happening. But any way that they can develop these characters more, create some connections between them, is just gonna, I mean, it emphasizes the kind of things that they do promotions with Be a Star and Make a Wish. I just don't see the downside to it, and it could really be something that would really help us. I mean, that would really help us connect and maybe take some of these characters to the next level in terms of mainstream penetration and those sorts of things that, you know, that it's unfortunate that somebody like Bautista had to go outside of the WWE to accomplish. Drax is not necessarily a character that would work in WWE, but I don't know why it has to be, I don't know why you couldn't do something sort of similar, maybe not as an alien, but as just a weird guy that has, a foreign guy who doesn't have, you know, something. Foreign guy, that scares me as soon as I said it, but I wish they would think outside the box a little bit in terms of these characters, especially the good guy characters, and, you know, and try to give us something a little bit different from what we've always gotten. And I think it could make a big deal for them and their partners and everybody. So I hope that's something that they'll consider. I think it's something that, you know, like I said, I think there's some really great recent examples where that kind of booking really helped. And like I said, I don't believe that it's that hard to make baby faces. I just think they have to show them doing relatable things, and we'll get on board with them. So that's my 2 cents on that. Go check out Guardians of the Galaxy. I hope I didn't spoil anything for anybody, and deal with it.